Funnily enough, the one of the very first things that it comes from the main theme was this feeling of uh, anticipation of this sort of building theme of, is something going to happen? And it happens within the main theme, and it's one of the very first things that certainly the picture gave to me to write. And so it was this sort of building of emotion, I guess it is, that sort of like climbs up, and that wound its way into the main theme. And yeah, so I mean, that was one of the very, very first things that I wrote, and it ended up sort of, I spent a lot of time on sort of crafting it into what ended up being the sort of like the main title. And actually it was interesting. Jon just mentioned that we had a sort of kind of break in the middle. We had a month's break, or a couple of months, a month and a half's break over the summer. And it's really interesting to work on something and push yourself and then stop for an enforced amount of time, and then come back and, with, an idea which has matured in your kind of unconscious all that time. You come back in, and it's actually, you have a really good take on what you've done and what you need to do. But, it really was a sort of a voyage of we just sort of went through it and tackled different bits, and found this language. And part of what was so good about it, apart from the fact that we were working on extremely good material, and we were both felt the real importance of working on this show. It's really well made, and it's an extraordinary emotional story, and but it. And because we both really trusted each other and really liked what each other were doing and sort of writing, our workflow began to happen in a really, really comfortable way. It was great. And I know those things are hard. And so I think we got very lucky. But also, as you can tell, Jon is incredibly generous and a delightful person to work with. So that made it a dream, and great.
Well, I just want to add two things. One, to that point, it was so much easier for me to be generous because I was working with Rachel, and obviously, I completely trusted her instincts, and was, anxiously waking up every morning to unwrap a gift, really. I mean, it was like it really felt like that. I mean, every morning it was like, ooh, and I'd unwrap this gift, and then get to kind of get my hands on it, and then sort of prepare myself to give her something that it was almost like a gift at the end of the day, because like, you so rarely get the opportunity to, in our line of work, we're working isolated in these caves and these silos, and you're giving it to the storytellers and the creatives, and you anticipate that they'll notice some of what you've done, hopefully, and appreciate it. But like, I knew that everything I handed to her would be noticed. Like, she would respond to the minutest detail in the work, that it kind of encouraged me and inspired me to look more closely at every moment, because I knew there was someone else on the other end who's going to get it. The other thing I just wanted to say, going back to like where we started, is that, and this is kind of the arc of the whole series, is that we started in the first episode with needing to establish the sort of essential, compelling story thread, which is that this family is so closely bound together. They're so close and so connected that when they're torn apart, we have to be desperately rooting for them to find each other again, because we don't see them together again for the most part until the last episode, you
Right.
know. So so that the major task, it seemed to us in the first episode, was to come up with motives and themes and, you know, germs musically that would, you know, relate to and kind of signify what held them together, you know, and you know,
Yes.
associating those things with, you know, there's a little motive that's in the very opening sequence when where there's some flash forwards, um and that motive, you know, is kind of a bonding motive, or their connection motive, and it sort of develops and is used throughout the series, and as well as their first Passover, which, you know, is sort of the beginning of an idea that is fully bloomed um in the final episode, in the final scene.